Hi everyone, welcome to Mentor Monday. My name's Lisa Ireland and I'm an Australian author of contemporary fiction and I'm here to be your writing mentor. So this is going to be a quick one today. As you can see, am filming not in my office but in my kitchen because and this is why, for those of you waiting for this video to drop, this is why it was late, because I have roadworks going on out the front of my house. This has been a bit of an ongoing situation. My last book, which is this one, Secret Life of Shirley Sullivan, my last book came out on the 28th of April, and on that day, the council started drainage works at the front of my house, and it's been going on ever since in one format or another. Anyway, it finishes this week, so from next week on we should be fine, but I am always trying to squeeze these videos in around very, very noisy works. So I'm in the kitchen. I think we probably will still get a little bit of background noise, but I'm going to try and zoom through today's topic. And I promise next week all will be back to normal. So what I want to talk about today was to do with character. Last week we talked a little bit about point of view and why you would choose a particular point of view, whether you would use a first person point of view or a third person point of view, and we talked a little bit about tense, whether we would work in what the good reasons would be to write in present tense or in past tense, and a lot of that depends on what you're trying to convey and the character whose eyes you are looking through. So today I want to talk about if you are writing from multiple character points of view, or even if you're not, how you create a distinct character voice. And this is actually quite a hard thing to do, because as writers, whether we want to or not, one of the things that we often do, particularly when we're beginners, is we insert our own voice into our characters. Now this is a bit tricky because you'll often hear publishers talking about and critics talking about author voice and saying that someone has a fresh new voice and that's exciting, or that it's a distinctive voice. When I started out, when I first started writing romance, one of the frequent comments that I got was, I had a lot of other things wrong with my work, but one of the most consistent comments I got from editors and from competition was that I had a strong, fresh voice, which is a really good thing, because that it can be, it can be an advantage to have a well-developed voice when you're starting out. But you can also develop it over time. If that doesn't apply to you, don't worry. Your author voice will develop over time. But I'm not talking exactly about your author voice today. I'm talking about your character voice. And how we differentiate, if we're using multiple points of view, between one character and another. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. Recently I read a new novel published. This book's published. And it was a great story with a great twist, but it had a male and a female character. And the voice was so similar, both characters' voices were so similar, that I had to keep flicking back so they would have the character name at the start of the chapter. But sometimes when you're reading, you don't. I don't know about you, but I'm bad. I often don't take notice of those signposts at the beginning of chapters, things like years or character names, or because particularly if I'm hooked in the story, I'm reading on. But one of the things that probably the major fault of this book, and the thing that didn't elevate it to a great, like it was a good read but not a great read for me, was the fact that I felt held back from being attached to either character because they both sounded so similar. Now, that's a really strong example because it was a male character and a female character. Usually it's easier to differentiate between the two. Sometimes authors get into trouble where they have a whole cast of characters of a similar age. So if you have, for instance, I read, and this is an example of how to do it, not how not to do it, is I recently read B.M. Carroll's Who We Were, and her whole cast of characters, it's set around a school reunion. So obviously every single character in the book is around about the same age. There's a cast of female characters and a cast of male characters, but even so, there's I think 3 or 4, I can't remember now because I read it a few months ago, but there's 3 or 4 female characters of the same age. It would be very easy for all those characters to sound the same. But if you want an example of how an author makes her characters sound very different and you're never in any doubt whose head you're in, read B.M. Carroll's Who We Were. That's a strong recommendation from me. Okay, so now I'm going to give you some tricks and tips of what you can do so that your characters don't all sound the same. So let's step back a bit to author voice. Now, you love words. You're a writer. You probably know a lot of really interesting and exciting and big words. A lot of descriptive words. You're smart, clearly. Otherwise, you're not writing books. But think about your character when you're writing. If you, sometimes for instance, I love the word discombobulate. I just love it. But if I'm writing a 15-year-old character, they're probably not going to use that word. Think about your speech. Think about if you're a parent or a grandparent, think about your kids' speech, your grandchildren's speech, or if you're a teacher, the kids that you work with. Think about your parents' speech, your aunts and uncles. So age is a really important factor, and I want you to really carefully observe the people in your life for their speech and the type of things they say, not the things you think they say. So when I was writing this one, Shirley, as you know, is, for those of you who've read it, Shirley is a 79-year-old woman. And I spent a lot of time with 79-year-old women when I was writing this book. Well, people from their mid-70s to their mid-80s. I did a lot of research, and one of the things I've researched, or one of the things I listened out for and took notes on, was the types of things that people really say. So don't have your 79-year-old character speaking like she came from the 1800s. Modern day older characters do use modern language, but they might not use exactly the same language as me, and they might not use exactly the same language as my 21-year-old son. So it's really important when you're writing to be a really good spy, to be a really good eavesdropper, and to really listen to what people say. The same goes for if you're writing a male character, and if you're writing romance novels, and I know some of you who tune in regularly are writing romance novels. If you're writing romance novels, you're often writing a male point of view and a female point of view. If you have a partner, and it's a male partner, listen to how your partner speaks. If other men in your life, your co-workers, if you work other than inside your home, and of course if you're in Victoria that's a little bit tricky right now, but whatever men you have in your life, if you are writing a male character, you need to listen to how they speak. And it's not just verbal, it's about the things that men don't say. Often read, particularly in romance books, where men give these great, and I think I might have done this myself, to be honest, where men give these great long monologues about how they feel about the heroine. And in reality, that just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen often. Men in general, I'm going to give you, he'll kill me if he knows I'm doing this, but I'll give you an example from my own life, is that my husband is a doer. He's not a sayer. So he is not verbally expressive, but he does many things to show his affection. For instance, this past weekend, he spent his whole Sunday, the whole day, because I had asked him, I've got an old iMac, and I asked him if it would be possible to get an updated version of Word or an updated version of Office onto the iMac. And it was because he works in IT. This is why I asked him, because I thought it would be simpler for him to do it than me, because I'm not very technologically minded. It was complex, and it took him a whole day. And I said to him, when I realised it was going to be complex and take up the whole day, I said to him, don't worry about it, it's okay. But he just persisted and did it. That is the way he shows his love and affection. So if you have a male character who's spouting great, monologues of love poetry to your heroine, particularly if you're writing contemporary, you might want to revisit that. Now, I know to a degree we're in the business of fantasy if we are writing, particularly if we're writing romance, but in all fiction, we're writing fiction. So it's okay to gild the lily a bit. Like it's okay to make your male character maybe 10% more verbal than the average Joe, but don't, in my opinion, it's not great. It's not great for your believability, for your credibility of your story, to have your male characters doing things that men just wouldn't do. Think about the words also that they would use, the body language they would use. And this goes once again for your female characters. Think about the things that women say when they're with other women, compared to the things that women say when they are speaking to men. People speak differently when they speak to their best friend, to the way they speak to their partner, to the way they speak to their children. That's another thing that I see quite often when we have kids in books, little kids. Now, this is whether the kid is a point of view character or not, but particularly if they're a point of view character. Children are complex beings, but they don't have generally, unless they're extremely precocious, they don't have adult-like thoughts. They process information differently to adults, and they don't speak like adults, they speak like children. But nor does an 8-year-old speak like a 2-year-old. Well, I have seen examples of both ends of this in writing, where we've got 10-year-olds talking as if they are toddlers or just beyond, or toddlers having great long discussions about things with their parents, which no 3-year-old would do. So if you're not a parent or a teacher, or you don't have nieces or nephews that you spend a lot of time with, if you're injecting kids into your manuscript, then you need to listen to children and talk to friends. Spend a bit of time with little children, or the children of the age that you are writing, to listen to what they really, really say. There's more to say about this characterisation, but I can see outside that they are going to start up again. So I'm just going to kind of wind up with a bit of an overview about what your characters, how your characters should be behaving. And also, before I do that, while we're still talking about speech, I want to talk about dialogue tags, speech tags. Said is your go-to. Please don't overuse, and this is against everything that your English teacher probably told you when you were in high school, but all the descriptive tags, murmured, whispered is different. Whispered or murmured actually we can occasionally use, but huffed, sighed, all those, now can't come up with, one off the top of my head, grunted, all those things use extremely sparingly, because what those dialogue tags do is they take the reader out of the point of view character's headspace and bring them back to bookland, and they remember that they're reading a book, and then they remember that they actually wanted a cup of tea, and then they put the book down. Whereas when you use action tags instead of speech tags, when you add an action tag, so I actually should have got one prepared earlier and I didn't, but I might say, stop doing that. She banged the book onto the table. So banged the book onto the table, terrible example, but bang the book onto the table is your action tag. Those don't disrupt the reader flow. They keep the eye on the page and they'll keep your reader in the story. If you have multiple characters talking, you might need tags to make sure that the reader knows which characters are saying what. And sometimes if you want the speech, for instance, if it's an argument, you don't want too many action tags because you want the speech to be fast, particularly if it's furious. You might put a couple of action tags in, but you might also need a few dialogue tags. Just use said. Lisa said. Said disappears. The only time that is different, I think, is I think in audio said it becomes more obvious if people are reading the book. But I know some voice artists might use discretion and actually not say if an author's put an excessive amount of saids in, they might take them out. I'm not sure. I don't really know much about audio. But anyway, for the written page, if you must use a dialogue tag, unless it's really important to convey that they were whispering or shouting or whatever, and really if you're needing to explain that the characters are whispering or shouting, you want to maybe go back and check the rest of your scene, because it should be obvious to me by everything out in the context of what you've written. It should be obvious to me whether the characters would be using a low voice or a high voice. I mean, or shouting or whatever. Sometimes I will, if it's not obvious, inject something like, the tone change. So maybe it might not be obvious. It might be something that is subtle that maybe the reader knows about the character, or the author is hinting to about the character to the reader. So you can do it, but don't overdo the descriptive tags. Okay, so that's where on dialogue tags. The truck is coming. I can see it. Okay, so a word on characters. Your story should be driven by your characters. I'm sure over the course of time we'll talk more about character in these little videos, but you have to think about what would your character do, not what you need your character to do for the story. That's where writers get into the most trouble. We get ourselves into trouble when we decide what we think a character should be doing, and we manipulate their behaviour to suit that. So what I mean by that is every action that your character takes should be in character for that character. I should believe it. And if they do something out of character, it should be shocking to the reader and also shocking to the character. Like if they do something for instance, if they're a very quiet person and they do something outlandish and or very courageous or whatnot, that needs to be noted, and then it needs to be made something of. We need to see from the character's point of view the build up to why they chose to do that action, and the fallout from it, the consequence of them taking this out of character action. So not saying that characters always have to do the expected, not at all, but we have to believe that is something that character would do. So if you have built up a character to be quite prim and perhaps someone who attends church, someone who's very proper, and then they drop the F-bomb somewhere down the track, there's got to be a reason for that. There's got to be maybe they're harking back to, perhaps they're a born-again Christian and used to be an exotic dancer, or and the F-bombs come from their previous life. Or what I'm saying is characters act out of reason. They don't just act to suit your story. They're not just, otherwise your story is just cardboard cutouts being manipulated by you on the stage. That doesn't make for good reading for a reader. It doesn't make for good story, and it's not a lot of fun either. There's nothing better than when your characters surprise you, and that happens when you know the character really well, when you've spent a lot of time working out what your character would and wouldn't do in any given situation. Okay, the truck is now parked right across my driveway, so I am going to wind it up here. If you have any questions about today's video, or if you'd like me to expand more on character, more on dialogue, if there's anything else that I can help you with in these videos, please let me know in the comments under the video or on my Facebook page. I always post a link to this video on my Facebook page, so you're welcome to contact me there. Okay, so just before we go, a couple of extra little things. I'm going to start doing what I've been reading. I haven't quite worked out whether I'm going to do it on the YouTube channel or on my Instagram, on Instagram. So, but I'm going to start doing what I've been reading around about once a month. So look out for that. I'll let you know. And I've also, one of these Monday slots every month is going to be taken up with me interviewing another published author about their path to publication. I've done a couple already. You would have seen the fantastic interview with the lovely Pamela Cook, and if you haven't checked that out, it's on the channel. Pam's a really well-established Australian author, and she had some really great tips for aspiring authors in her video. For next month, so where are we, September, for October, I've interviewed a newish author to the Australian scene, which is Kanina May. Kanina has a history in writing for TV, and she's about to publish her second novel. She had a really interesting path to publication because of all the TV writing she'd done, so that's the one to look out for next month. All right, I'm going to sign off here. I think we've done extremely well to get through it without any background roadwork noise. Thanks so much for joining me on Mentor Monday. I'll be back again next Monday. I'll see you then. Bye.